One built a cult of personality across a country of 1 billion people. The other built a cult of personality inside a Guyanese jungle compound of 918. One was worshipped as the great helmsman of a continent. The other was worshipped as a literal god by his followers, who drank poison rather than disobey him. Tonight, the same playbook at two completely different scales. The Tournament of Champions begins. Tonight, Mao Zedong against Jim Jones, the chairman against the shepherd. Round of 16, Match 1. Mao Zedong arrives in this round as the champion of episode 15, where he defeated Fidel Castro by the longest body count in recorded political history. Jim Jones arrives as the champion of episode 1, where he defeated Charles Manson by every measure of institutional reach, organizational discipline, and confirmed body count. Tonight, the dictator and the cult leader. One question: who built the more dangerous machine? Welcome back to Evil vs. Evil, Monsters of History. The Tournament of Champions is here. This is episode 25. Born in Shaoshan, in Hunan Province, China, in 1893, Mao Zedong was the eldest of 4 surviving children of a prosperous peasant family. His father, Mao Yicheng, had risen from poverty to comfortable middle-class status through brutal discipline and beat his son for any sign of weakness. Mao rebelled at every step. He left home as soon as he could. He served briefly in the army of the revolution that overthrew the last Chinese emperor in 1911. He studied at a teacher's college in Changsha. He moved to Beijing in 1918 and worked as an assistant librarian at Peking University, where he discovered Marx and Lenin and the idea that the Chinese peasantry could be the vanguard of a global revolution. In 1921, Mao was one of 13 founding members of the Chinese Communist Party. He spent the next decade organizing peasant uprisings and evading the nationalist forces of Chiang Kai-shek. In 1934, when Chiang finally cornered the communists, Mao led the survivors on the Long March, a 6,000-mile retreat across mountains, swamps, and deserts that ended a year later with only a fraction of the original force still alive. The Long March made him the undisputed leader of the party. On October 1st, 1949, standing on a balcony above Tiananmen Square, Mao proclaimed the establishment of the People's Republic of China. He would rule for 27 more years. The body count began immediately. Land reform between 1949 and 1953 killed between 1 million and 5 million Chinese landlords. Then came the Great Leap Forward. From 1958 to 1962, Mao ordered the entire Chinese rural population reorganized into massive agricultural communes. Crops failed. Grain was confiscated to pay for foreign exports. The greatest famine in human history followed. Estimates of the dead range from 15 million to 55 million people. Mothers ate their own children. Entire villages were buried in mass graves. When Communist Party officials tried to reform the policies that had caused the disaster, Mao responded in 1966 with the Cultural Revolution, a campaign of mass psychological terror, in which teenage Red Guards were unleashed across the country to denounce, beat, and murder their teachers, parents, and neighbors. Estimates of the additional dead range from 1 to 2 million. Tens of millions more were tortured, exiled to remote villages, or driven to suicide. He died on September 9th, 1976, of complications from Lou Gehrig's disease, having ruled for 27 years and survived multiple coup attempts from within his own inner circle. His body was preserved and placed in a glass coffin in Tiananmen Square, where it remains today, nearly 50 years later. Estimates of the total death toll attributable to his rule range from 40 million to 80 million people, the highest of any single political leader in human history. That was Mao Zedong, the chairman who built a god out of himself. Born in Crete, Indiana, in 1931, James Warren Jones was a strange, intense child from the start. He held funerals for dead animals. He read obsessively about Stalin, Hitler, and Gandhi, studying not their ideologies but their methods. He preached to other children in his backyard. One former friend remembered Jones killing a cat with a knife just to give it a proper burial sermon. But here is what makes Jones genuinely terrifying. He was not just charismatic. He was, on the surface, good. He genuinely championed racial integration in the 1950s, decades before it was safe to do so. He adopted children of multiple races and called them his rainbow family. He fed the homeless. He built free medical clinics. He preached a gospel of equality and economic justice that drew thousands of sincere, intelligent people into his orbit. This was the People's Temple, and by the 1970s, it was not a fringe cult. It was a political powerhouse. Jim Jones met with Rosalind Carter, the First Lady. He was photographed with Walter Mondale, the Vice President. The mayor of San Francisco appointed him to the city's housing authority. The People's Temple had over 20,000 members at its peak. But behind the public face, the temple was a prison. Jones controlled his followers through escalating layers of psychological terror. Members were forced to sign blank confessions to crimes they had not committed. They were beaten in public meetings. They were sexually humiliated. They were drugged. They were forced to surrender their homes, their savings, their children. In 1977, Jim Jones moved his entire operation to the jungle of Guyana in South America and built a compound he named Jonestown. It was supposed to be paradise. It became a concentration camp. Armed guards patrolled the perimeter. Loudspeakers blared Jones' voice 24 hours a day. On November 18, 1978, a U.S. congressman named Leo Ryan flew to Jonestown to investigate. Jones had him shot and killed at the local airstrip. And then he gave the order he had been rehearsing for years. 918 people died that day. 304 of them were children. It remained the largest single loss of American civilian life until September 11, 2001. That was Jim Jones, the shepherd who taught his entire flock to drink the poison. Now let us put these two side by side in the round of 16. Category 1, body count. Mao killed somewhere between 40 million and 80 million people across 27 years. Jim Jones killed 918 in a single afternoon, plus a handful of additional temple deaths over the years. The edge is Mao, by an order of magnitude that defies comparison. Category 2, personality cult. Mao's image was printed on every Chinese textbook for a generation. His little red book sold over 1 billion copies. He was depicted as a sun rising over the country in mosaics on every village wall. Jim Jones' image, by contrast, was personal. He looked his followers in the eye. He healed them. He fed them. He convinced them, individually, that he was a literal incarnation of God. Mao was worshipped as a symbol. Jones was worshipped as a man. The edge in pure intimacy of religious devotion is Jones. The edge in scale of devotion is Mao. Category 3, method of control. Mao controlled his population through state apparatus, propaganda, secret police, and famine. Jones controlled his population through theology, sexual coercion, drugs, and isolation. The edge in scale is Mao. The edge in completeness, at the level of an individual follower, is Jones. A Chinese peasant could still hate Mao privately. A Jonestown resident could not. Category 4, capacity for greater damage. This is the tournament category. Mao operated at the absolute ceiling of his ability. He had 1 billion people, an army of millions, and 4 decades of power. He could not have killed more than he did. Jones, by contrast, was operating at his floor. He had 20,000 followers and the ear of the White House. Had he stayed in California and continued building his political coalition, he might have become a congressman, a senator, or even a governor. His death cult in Guyana was a panic response to scrutiny, not a planned conclusion. The edge in unrealized capacity is Jones, theoretically. The edge in actualized capacity is Mao. Category 5. Cultural staying power. Mao is one of the 3 or 4 most recognizable political figures of the 20th century. His face is still on Chinese currency. He is still officially venerated by the Chinese Communist Party. Jones gave the English language the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid," used by millions of people every day without knowing where it came from. Both are immortal. The edge in pure historical weight is Mao. The edge in idiomatic permanence is Jones. So the categories split 3-2 in favor of Mao. But categories do not capture everything. Here is the wild card. What if Jones had been given Mao's resources? A continent of peasants, an army, an ideology that could justify violence on any scale. Jones had every personal quality required for Maoist rule. Charisma, cruelty, total conviction, total willingness to use death as a political tool. Given a country of 1 billion people, Jim Jones would have killed at Mao's scale. Now, what if Mao had been given Jones resources? 20,000 followers, a jungle, no army. Mao would have been a footnote. He needed the state apparatus to be Mao. Jones did not need the state. He built his own. The verdict: Mao Zedong advances. Jim Jones is eliminated from the bracket. The decision comes down to actual realized damage. Jones may have had the personality of a Mao, but he never had the country. Mao had both. In a tournament designed to find the most dangerous human being who has ever lived, the man who actually killed 40 million people beats the man who killed 918 every single time. But here's the part that should disturb you. Mao's image still hangs in classrooms across the world, most populous country. He is treated by the official state ideology that still rules over more than 1 billion people as a complicated but ultimately positive historical figure. Jones is treated by every culture on Earth as a monster. The killer who killed 40 million has been rehabilitated. The killer who killed 918 is the cautionary tale. Mass murder, it turns out, is far easier to forgive when it comes wrapped in a flag. Mao was the chairman. Jones was the shepherd. Mao Zedong moves on to the quarterfinals. Jim Jones is eliminated from the Tournament of Champions. Next episode: Genghis Khan against Pablo Escobar. The horseman who built the largest land empire in history against the farm boy who built the largest criminal empire in modern history. Round of 16, Match 2.